morning. How are you? Good. I forgot my red blazer. Damn.
I was instructed. Unfortunately, I would like to do the agenda first before we hear from.
Well, maybe I better raise mine. I don't really
Sorry, where is it? After the agenda,
Okay, good. Okay.
I'm going to try to say.
I mean, we want to be reasonable. On the other hand, it's not an agenda item and I don't have all day. It's not an agenda item and we don't have all day. So, I'm presuming
If
every...
I said, we have about 30 minutes to give them the number of people who signed up.
Good. Yeah. And presumably not everybody's going to speak because I assume they only want to say the same thing. Exactly. Yeah, that'd be helpful. Okay, good. Good.
I had hoped maybe to ask for one or two to come up and do that. Because they had to sign up. So I feel like I can't have that option.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, they're entitled, so. It's a free country.
Yeah. I just got back from 10 days in Southern California. My sister's in Palm Desert. My son's in college down in Claremont. And I went down there with his husband and I went down there for Thanksgiving. And got my son and his friends to Palm Desert and brought the kids back and stayed with her for the whole week. And saw his choir concert on Fridays. Awesome. It was a little hot. But it was just every day you wake up with I walked every day.
Kirsten, do you have the sheet that has the actual
Most of the
motion
time.
on it? I don't have that.
Got a little bit of rain.
Is there a separate sheet or just is it in our
Usually,
packet?
yeah, I get a separate sheet and it says proposed action or something like that on it.
I'm back. Yeah. It's sort of a so still on time. So just let them know. Have somebody say, we really want to publicize the fact that people want to connect people that want to do public. So yeah. So yeah, only a matter of time. It's good to see you. Yeah, I'll send it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because it pretty much always is. And, like in Palm Desert, people were in Uggs and leggings and jackets and scarves. And it was cold at night. No question, it's cold. When the sun would go down behind the
So you have your dinner.
I can just say so moved.
Yeah, and you can just do a staff recommendation.
in the day.
Okay.
That's fine.
Oh, yeah, I just sort of like it the way we usually, if you go look at last month's agenda, it sort of spells out specifically for the record what we are directing, as opposed to just saying so moved that it says it approves the Department of State lands to commence investigation of blah 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 under blah 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 blah. Just so it's on the record, 20 years from now, somebody can go back and figure out what it is I moved and didn't. Thank you.
Yeah, so each of them is on here. I think what I would do is
No, there's nothing too complicated. They all just wing it. But I'm just
Exactly.
saying for the future, I just liked that because
I thought so too. They didn't know what it. I'll make sure that they have it. Except
Is my mic on?
Or should I ask her what
Good morning. The board is now in order. We understand that we have folks who have signed up to testify for items that are not specifically on the agenda, and I just wanted to say that we will be going through the board's agenda before we pause and have an opportunity for folks to speak to other matters. So just so you are aware of that, and let us get through our agenda. I want to welcome you to the Land Board meeting, and also welcome our interim director in her first opportunity to work with us in one of our meetings. I want to note that our process is moving forward for hiring a permanent director, much to Ms. Cummins, I think, probably relief, but we look forward to working with you in this meeting. We're going to open the meeting with the consent agenda. Director Cummins, would you like to go through the items for the consent agenda so we can
Thank
make
you
those decisions?
very much, Secretary Atkins. For the record, I'm Stephanie Halleck Cummins. I'm the interim director of the Department of State Lands, and with me today is Jim Paul, who's the assistant director for land management, who is going to be walking you through most of these items on the consent agenda. The first item that we have this morning is approval of the minutes from the October 13th, 2015 State Land Board meeting. That's item number 1 in your packet.
And we'll be going through each of these individually, but then looking for a motion at the end.
Yes, that's what I understand you prefer to do. Okay, so that's the first item. The second item is a request for approval of the release of 560 acres of subsurface mineral and geothermal rights in Malheur County. And Jim will walk you through that one.
Good morning, Secretary Atkins. Good morning, Treasurer Wheeler.
Good morning.
Everyone hear me there? Close enough?
Closer.
How about that? Okay. I'm Jim Paul, Assistant Director. I oversee the Common School Fund Property Program, and will be presenting those items related to that program on your agenda today. Consent agenda item 1B originates from an application we received in March 2014 from Irina Bauman for the release of approximately 560 acres of mineral and geothermal rights. The surface ownership is owned by Ms. Bauman, and the subsurface ownership is owned by the Common School Fund. Per our standard process, we go ahead with an analysis that we request of Department of Geology and Mineral Industries to assess if there's any potential value in mineral or geothermal rights on the property. That report determined that there was little or no potential value, and they classified the oil and gas potential as unknown. However, when we followed up with the agency on that determination, they did opine that it was very unlikely, given the geologic history of the region, that there was any oil and gas potential on this site. Given that there was not any substantial value, potential value identified, we follow our process with a standard $10 per acre charge to transfer those mineral rights. In this case, that would be $5,600 fee for this transaction.
Thank you.
Okay. So the next item is a request for approval to grant an addendum to an existing permanent reciprocal access easement to cross state trust lands in Coos and Douglas counties.
So this dates back to an original mutual access agreement signed back in 1957 between the Board of Forestry, the Land Board, and the adjacent landowner Weyerhaeuser to allow for mutual access across all three entities' properties. Over time, that access agreement has been had addendums added to it a number of times. Most recently, about a year ago, it came to our attention there are some road segments that have been missed, so to speak, and have not been covered under any of the addendums. In order to make sure that reciprocal agreement is complete and that we do have complete access to the property from that part of the landscape, we are recommending the approval of an additional addendum that will provide for that access. And again, this is a reciprocal agreement, so no compensation is involved in this transaction.
And I would just note there are maps in your booklets if you need to refer to them.
Any questions? Treasurer, you have any questions about either the first or second? I'm sorry, I didn't
Just
classify
one
that.
quick question. Is there a, under item B, the $5,600 fee, is there a clear process by which those fees are used for some designated purpose? Or does it just go into the department's general fund allocate? Where does, it's a small amount, but I'm just curious, where does it go?
Yeah, Treasurer Wheeler, those monies get deposited directly into the Common School Fund.
Thank you.
Quick confirming question on item C. This is an access agreement to the roads, doesn't change anything about what roads are open or closed or available or might be used for something different, simply that both parties have access. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct, Secretary.
Okay. The next item on the consent agenda is request for approval to initiate the review and determination of the sale of historically filled lands located near the city of Rainier in Columbia County.
So the department received an application in 2009 from the Waterfront Place Condominium Association to purchase this property, which is comprised of historically filled lands. It is approximately a quarter acre of land just outside of the city of Rainier that the state does claim ownership to. Because of a number of ownership issues we actually had to work through with this property, there was a delay in terms of us making a determination as to whether we believed it would be recommended to move forward with the due diligence. We needed to work out an ownership claim that the city believed they had. We have since resolved that, and we now do have clear ownership of the property. We also were moving forward and conducted a mitigation project on that site related to a removal fill activity nearby. We are now at a point to seriously consider whether or not to sell this property, and there are still a number of steps that would need to happen regarding subdivisions or partitions of the legal lots of record. However, the applicant has indicated that they are willing to incur all the costs of that transaction, which would in fact mean if we were to sell this property, it would be a net revenue generator for the fund as opposed to a net cost. So we are now at the point of recommending that we do move into the phase of a formal due diligence to determine if, in fact, the department would recommend ultimately selling this piece of property. So just to clarify, there would be another visit to the land board on this property before it sells to actually get approval to sell.
Thank you. Any questions?
Just one quick question. As I look at the, that is infill. Is it developable infill, or are they protecting a view easement? What's their interest here, or do we know?
Secretary Wheeler, we believe it is primarily to protect their view interest. We've tried to make them as aware as we can that it's very unlikely this is ever developable, especially given the wetland project that is there and the requirements around that project, as well as a city access easement that we're in the process of working out across the property to access some other city property. We've made them aware of all these factors, so we believe they do not intend to try to develop. We believe it is simply for a view shed and to have essentially a waterfront piece of property that will connect their property to the land adjacent to the water.
May I ask another question, Madam Secretary? Will that be clarified when this comes back to the landlord, or to the land board, sorry, if your study determines that you want to go forward on this, will we have an answer to that question?
Yes, Treasurer, we can have an answer to that question.
Great,
we will
thank
clarify that for you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, item E, and before I introduce item E, I wanted to be sure you saw a letter that was we received yesterday in public comment just in general about land sales. Since we're talking about land sales, I want to be sure you saw that. So item E on the consent agenda is a request for approval to initiate, this is another initiation of review, initiate the review and determination of the sale or exchange of up to 15 parcels in Klamath and Crook counties.
So these parcels have recently been identified by the department as we've applied the implementation criteria under the 2012 Real Estate Asset Management Plan. These 15 have been identified initially as unlikely to have the ability to generate revenue. They're currently not generating revenue, and our initial analysis, we believe, is showing they are unlikely to generate any revenue of significance in the future. What this approval would do was, again, begin our formal due diligence process, where we would then to do a number of actions to confirm if that is the case, and if in fact we conclude at the end of that work we would come before you again to request approval to sell some or all of these parcels.
Questions?
Madam Secretary, I move adoption of the consent agenda.
Without objection? Adopted.
Thank you. We have 2 action items. Jim is going to stay here for the discussion of the first one, which is agenda item number 2, request for approval of the sale of up to 7 parcels that total 280 acres in Gillum, Grant, and Wheeler counties.
So these 7 parcels are the last of 16 parcels that were approved by the board under the John Day Basin Area Plan in February 2014 to initiate our due diligence. So we've gone through the due diligence on all 16 parcels, and these, as a result of that, these 7 we are recommending to be offered up for sale through public auction. There's 280 acres approximately total, with an estimated value of around $100,000. So not very high value parcels, which is what we should expect if these are parcels that in fact we believe do not have much value currently or moving forward, which we have determined. We did go through our public comment process. We did not receive a lot of comment. We received comment from 2 adjacent property owners on one of these parcels that expressed an interest in acquiring the property, which was part of the factor that led to recommending a public auction approach. We also received a general comment from a school board member just asking about our land sale process and wanting to understand how we go about examining lands for sale and ultimately going through selling our lands.
Madam Secretary, may I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
And you responded
We did
to
respond.
that school board. Could I get a copy of the response?
I'd be happy to give you
Thank
a copy
you. I'd
of
like
that
to see
response.
Question from me. I know the real estate plan identifies the kinds of properties that are appropriate for this. It does look like from the map that these are all inside other major, surrounded by major ownership of other kinds. And I'm assuming that the report has documented what the management costs have been as opposed to the sale price might be.
Yes, Secretary of State, we do have included in your agenda item, we have some addendums that summarize what we call our land evaluation form that just summarizes a lot of the key factors as a result of our due diligence, as well as an intent to finalize form that documents our rationale around to sell. However, there is quite a bit of information behind all of that in our land filing, our parcel filing system on all of the work that came behind that information.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, please go ahead.
Take
I'm sorry.
turns. You go ahead.
Okay, that seems very egalitarian. Thank you. Do we also consider exchange as one option versus sale? I mean, is there an opportunity here to potentially trade and derive a higher value asset from the perspective of the land board?
Treasurer Wheeler, yes, we do consider exchange. All things being equal, generally when we find that there's multiple parties that might be interested, the public auction approach tends to be the one that's most defensible in terms of maximizing value. With exchanges, that we can choose that route where we actually aren't finding other interest, but there's an adjacent landowner that's very interested and therefore we can go out and assess market value and negotiate for a price that we believe we might equal or exceed public auction. In these cases, our analysis led to a sale would be the likely most beneficial outcome to the fund.
Great, thank you, I appreciate it.
You indicated that this was the last of 16 that had been identified earlier under the real estate management plan. Are there other groups of potential that you're in that initiation of review period that may be coming soon, or are we sort of done with I know this has been kind of a cleanup operation.
Sure. Just Secretary of State, make sure I understand your question. Are you asking what's the process with the rest of those 16? Where are we at in that process, or what might be coming next once we're done with these? Very good question. So the 15 parcels that you just approved for due diligence is part of what's coming next. And beyond that, we have what I'd call it sort of a dynamic ongoing review of our properties and evaluating whether or not it's appropriate to hold or to sell. The implementation process around that is in our 2012 Real Estate Asset Management Plan. However, in our annual land report, which we'll be bringing to you next February for the previous fiscal year, we actually track all of those parcels that we have preliminarily assessed are unlikely to be of value and to retain. And just to give you a sense, right now we only have, it's less than 1% of our total common school land holdings that we have in that sort of initial category that we think we may want to sell. So most of the 750,000 acres are not in the category that we believe are worth investigating selling.
And I believe this question's been asked before, but pardon me for being the newest board member. How often is the real estate management, asset management plan updated? We're working with the 2012 plan. When might there be? Sorry, the question that I asked was, how often is the real estate asset management plan, the current one is 2012, how often is that reviewed and updated itself?
Sure. It's designed as a 10-year plan. However, it does have the ability within it to update it as needed during those 10 years if conditions change, if something of significance happens where the department believes it's worth updating, which is in fact what we did in 2012. We updated at that time because of the changes in the economy in Central Oregon, which is a big focus of the 2006 plan. We made some amendments to it. So at any time the board could direct, or the department could initiate updating that plan, but barring that, it would serve for 10 years.
Thank you.
One final
Mr.
question.
Treasurer.
I notice on the forms none of this is developable, obviously. What's the process around cultural and historic reviews of a parcel? Who does that?
The cultural and historic reviews we do internally. We have an expert on staff who actually goes through that process and does that review to make sure that we are doing what's required under state law. And any information we discover in that review, we make public and transparent.
I think it would be interesting maybe for a future land board to actually have a presentation on that. I'd just be curious to know what the process is and how that determination is made. That would be interesting, useful, I think.
We can
for
do
the
that.
record.
Thank you.
Very good. Very good.
Madam Secretary, if there's no further questions on your part, I move the staff recommendation.
Without objection? So ordered.
So
Thank you,
the last action item on the formal agenda is a request for the adoption of the 2015 update to the department's sustainability plan. And I believe that there are a few people who signed up to speak on this plan, and I'm not sure if they signed the right list, and so we might want to check when I'm done on whether or not they want to speak
We'll
on
come
this.
back to that when you're done, yes.
Okay. So the departments in state government have been involved in sustainability planning since the Kulongoski administration. I also have included in your packet a recent letter from the Sustainability Board to Governor Brown. asking for, if you will, a reinvigoration of this effort and for state agencies to assign someone to be their sustainability coordinator, which we have done at DSL. The report before you was prepared by Kirk Jarvie on our staff at the request of former Director Abrams. Basically, we focus on internal activity that we can do as an agency in terms of water conservation, in terms of using less paper, in terms of driving less, all those kinds of activities. We also, as you'll see in the plan, talk about some of our natural resource management and where we work with some of our lessees on our grazing land, on their grazing practices, and where appropriate on water use. We have, as Jim mentioned, we have some industrial commercial type lands around the city of Bend, and if and when those lands are sold or leased, we try to work with the purchasers or lessees on using sustainable development practices. And obviously, we have an ongoing responsibility to protect and conserve our waterways and our wetlands, and we try and our uplands as well, and we try and work to make our processes easier for people to use and to be responsive to those who are concerned about the work that we're doing, as you see evidenced in the room before you today. So we would appreciate your approval of our plan to keep doing the good work that we have started and that I can take no claim for since I wasn't here for any of it. But it's a good plan, and I think that we are certainly committed within the department to sustainability. I know our staff feels very strongly about it, and I'm confident into the future they will continue to make it a priority.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Mr. Treasurer?
Comment, Madam Secretary, and Interim Director Cummins and I have already discussed this. There's two aspects to this plan. There's the internal agency aspect to the plan, and there's the external policy aspect to the plan. And I'll just lay down a marker for future land boards. I think it's entirely appropriate for the state land board to chime in on external policies regarding sustainability, because that gets to the charge and the work of the state land board. With regard to internal policies, that feels a lot like micromanagement to me on the part of the state land board. We all have our own agencies. We're responsible for our own agencies' performance internally around sustainability, and it strikes me as a slight overreach on the part of the land board to be going into the micromanagement of their internal policies with regard to sustainability. I'm inclined to believe that agencies should be innovative and entrepreneurial in their own policies rather than having us three dictate how they do their internal policies. So I will move adoption of the staff recommendation, just with the caveat that I think future land boards should look into this issue of internal versus external sustainability.
Thank you. Good point and well noted. I think I was very appreciative myself that, in fact, the internal and external persons were both considered in the development of a sustainability plan. I don't know whether all agencies do that, but it was indeed helpful. My assumption is, and maybe this is in the form of the question or can be part of future future discussion if there isn't an answer now, that that where the external policy has been established, for instance, the rangeland management piece, that as items are brought to the land board that may relate to that this becomes one of the source documents and the check boxes, if you will, for consideration in making those decisions. And that would seem to me to be very helpful in a way of keeping that portion of the sustainability plan alive.
Secretary Atkins, I do not know if that has been the practice in the past, but we can certainly make sure it is in the future, and I can check for you to see if that.
Or you can bring that back for different discussion if there's a reason to think otherwise.
Absolutely.
But it felt like a very good set of guidance, particularly around your 2015 updates in terms of the climate considerations. So worth considering.
Thank
and
you.
I believe I did have a motion to accept this. Oh, I'm sorry. Got to get back to the fact that we had, and I'm sorry if I never have the mic in the right place. folks who had signed up indicating they wanted to speak to agenda item number 3, which is this one. And so if you do want to come forward as I call you, we'd ask you to keep your comments to 2 to 3 minutes and that you introduce yourself for the record. If indeed this was a carryover that you intended really to sign up for the discussion that is off the agenda, let us know and we'll switch you over onto that list. So Lily Clausen? Yes. Would you like to come forward, please? State your name and perhaps the city that you come from for the record.
I'm Lily Clausen, Clausen Oysters from Coos Bay, Oregon. And I'm here because I'm very concerned about the sustainability of the oyster businesses in Coos Bay. If that pipeline is getting the easement, that would potentially destroy most of the oyster production in Coos Bay, because the digging up of the ground to get the pipes in would create a lot of silt, which the tides carrying the silt back and forth would go over all the oyster beds, almost 2,000 acres. Oysters are filter feeders. When they ingest that silt along for the food that they get out of the water, it will take only a few days to a few months to kill off a lot of oysters. We had that experience when the Carissa ran aground. We had 70% death loss. It took 4 years and 9 months to get paid, and it was a very destructive thing. But the silt that will be released during the digging operation, also the turning basin in front of that new building, would create a lot of problems in Coos Bay by that silt being moved back and forth with the tide for weeks. And so I would ask that it better not be granted, because there are alternative routes available. And if they can stay out of the bay, it's okay with me. I'm all for jobs. And I don't want them to kill off our companies and the jobs that we provide.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Noted the connection to sustainability. Alexander Harris.
Hello, State Land Board. My name is Alexander Harris, and I just wanted to note there are members of 7 counties here to show their opposition to the Jordan Cove Energy Project. I want to address external policies to the sustainability plan. I've reviewed the current proposal for the sustainability plan and the past sustainability plan from 2009, and I have a few comments. Theme number 4 of the sustainability plan states that as landowner and regulator, the DSL has a key role for sustaining and maintaining a natural resource base. 2009 sustainability plan expands on this role by stating sustaining and, in some cases, enhancing the condition of natural resources is inherent to fulfilling the department's mission. According to Oregon's administrative rules, the DSL is responsible for managing submerged state-owned land to, quote, ensure the collective rights of the public to fully use and enjoy this resource for commerce, navigation, fishing, recreation, and other related public purposes. The rules also state the department will not grant an easement if it determines that the proposed use or development would unreasonably impact uses or developments proposed or already in place within the requested area. This is powerful language that has very strong implications if it's taken seriously. Now I'd like to highlight how the approval of the easements would directly be related to the Jordan Cove Energy Project's request to have access to Haines Inlet in the Bay of Coos Bay. I'd like to specifically highlight that the easement is in direct violation of the DSL's role of sustaining, maintaining, and enhancing natural resources for the public use. Issuing an easement through Haines Inlet would benefit a private Canadian corporation at the expense of oysters, oyster growers, fishing, recreation, and other values that Oregonians rely on. Recently, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission requested 2 pieces of information from the Pacific Connector pipeline. The first piece of information was how many easements the corporation had signed with private landowners. The second was how many customers the corporation had signed with overseas. On November 4th, the Pacific Connector Pipeline Corporation responded to FERC. First piece of information was how many easements they had signed with landowners. Of the 7,003 acres that the corporation would need to build the pipeline, they've signed 226. That is 3.2%. A little bit of math and a little bit of foresight would bring us all to the same conclusion. 95% of the pipeline route will be eminent domain. We will be using the doctrine of public interest to give public and private land to a corporation that's not even from the United States. The other piece of information requested from FERC was equally as amazing. The corporation has yet to sign a single customer overseas, demonstrating that there is no demand for the project. Okay. So just to conclude, sorry. Just to conclude, I would like to highlight that this case is especially unusual and especially controversial. And on those grounds, the State Land Board has the authority to take up easement cases from the DSL, and I request that that is done, and the State Land Board denies those easements. Thank you.
Thank you. I do appreciate, and if there are comments on the sustainability project, and I do understand folks are making a connection there, but since we are going to take a group of testimony after we have completed our agenda on the issue of the LNG permits and fills, if we could hold to get our work done on the sustainability plan, I'd appreciate it. But folks are signed up, so I will call them forward. If you can wait and be on the list for the next subject, please let me know. Gregory Monahan.
Madam Secretary, if I could also ask if people are testifying specifically on the agency's sustainability plan, could they also state whether they support it or oppose it? That would be helpful for me.
It's helpful as well. Your name and city for the...
My name is Dr. Gregory Monahan. I'm a resident of Portland, Oregon. I'm a retired engineer, and for the last 7 years have taught at Portland Community College, where I introduced the topics of climate change and sustainability into the required engineering curriculum. I've served on the Lake Oswego Sustainability Advisory Board for 6 years, 4 of them as co-chair, and I'm currently the chair of the Beyond Gas and Oil team for the Oregon Sierra Club. I'm here today speaking on behalf of my 3 grandchildren who are all residents of Oregon. The document which describes the sustainability plan, 2015 update for the Department of State Lands, lists under the category of challenges ahead, drought and climate change. As a land manager, as an aquatic resources manager. Speaking as an engineer, if DSL is serious about sustainability, it should commit to viewing all decisions that come before it through a sustainability lens. Some of its decisions will result in either an increase or a decrease in carbon emissions, which is one of the primary markers for future climate changes. I urge DSL to, whenever possible, adopt a life cycle carbon accounting methodology in its decision making. This will yield a quantitative number. Will it positively increase our carbon emissions, or will it decrease them? Anything less, I believe, would be a disservice to the people of Oregon. And break your rule for 2 sentences here. For example, if it presently has before it decisions related to the Jordan Cove LNG export project, a life cycle carbon accounting will show that this project will significantly increase the carbon emissions of the state. Thank you.
And do you support our adoption of the sustainability plan, or
there is not enough detail? This is a kind of an outline overview. We can all talk about sustainability, but sustainability can be greenwashed as a feel-good exercise, or it can be reduced to a scientific, engineering, quantitative approach.
Thank you.
It's how it's implemented.
Thank you.
Thank you. Harlan Schober.
Yeah, hello. My name is Harlan Schober. I'm from Portland. I don't know if I'll meet the specifics about the guidelines for testifying here, but I'll be brief enough. It should be painless for you. We're talking big picture and not micromanaging. And as we all know, it's what's going on in Paris and the urgency of the really big picture about carbon emissions and other greenhouse gases. This pipeline represents a huge investment. If there are rules of money, it's that money has to get paid back. And if this much investment is put into pipelines, making it possible to use fossil fuels, we're looking at a commitment to doing what we can no longer do. We're looking at a money commitment, 30, 40, 50 years for people to get their investment back. Too many powerful people and interests will need to keep burning fuel if this is allowed to go forward. So on that basis, however you reach the conclusion, I would ask you to deny this pipeline. Thank you. And about your question, I don't know my answer to that. I can't answer it for
Thank you.
That's fair.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So we have a motion already on the table with respect to adoption of the sustainability plan. Staff recommendation has been moved, I believe,
That's correct.
by the treasurer. Without objection, so ordered. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that brings us to the end of our planned agenda for today. Because people have traveled and come to give voice to some important information. We're happy to extend the treasurer's and my time at the hearing to take some public testimony. I have 12 individuals who have signed up on the list. If each of you takes 2 to 3 minutes, we should manage to give about another half an hour to this issue, which, as I do want to make clear, is not before the board for decision today, but are happy to hear from folks, and we'll start going through them. We'll excuse the director for now.
And I just wanted to say that Julie Curtis will be keeping time, and
Yes.
do keep an eye out at Julie and be respectful of the land board's time. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Members of the audience were more attuned to Julie than I was, so I appreciate that. I appreciate the assistance with with that. So, Katie Iman.
Thank you, Madam Secretary and Mr. Treasurer.
Good morning.
Appreciate the opportunity that you're opening this up to comment. And I'd just like to say that obviously there's a lot of people throughout the whole state that are very interested in this topic of the Jordan Cove project. It's a very complex project, and a lot of affected landowners don't have access to the internet, don't use the internet. And so I urge the department to schedule more public hearings on the processes that are currently underway for the DSL dredge and fill permits. I also wanted to say that I hope that at the end of this process that you take this issue up and deal with it directly. I also just like to personally say that I oppose this project because of the safety risk. I live a half a block from the Cascadia subduction zone tsunami inundation zone in Bandon, Oregon, and I know that this project is right in the smack in the middle. However, Coos County has not adopted maps that place this area where they intend the terminal to be. And because they have not adopted the Dogami maps, under the land use procedures, we cannot say this is in a tsunami zone or an earthquake-sensitive zone for land use permits. So that's a frustration, obviously, but what you can do is you can take a look at tsunami issues and earthquake issues, and I hope you do so in your dredge and fill, because we'll be using a lot of the dredge material for the facility. And finally, I'm very concerned about climate change, and this would be one of the largest greenhouse gas emitters in Oregon history, and so that's personally why I'm opposed. The risk to the safety of people and the risk to the planet. Thank you very much for listening to my comments.
Thank you, Ms. Iman. John Clark.
Thank you very much for giving us the time. I'm an impacted landowner, and so I'm subject to eminent domain. But that is not the issue that I'm going to bring before you. I never thought I'd be an activist, and at 80 years old, I'm an activist, and so that's the way it is. That's life. On Monday, I received in the mail, because I'm one of those people that doesn't have the internet, and there are other reasons too. But in that letter, I was asked to evaluate a person's concern because it had to do with notice. They were within the notice area, the 75 feet or whatever it is that was required by Coos County to these people. Someone knew that I was in it, so they said, John, take a look at this and tell me what you think. I haven't had much time because consequently I drove today to get here. But I would like to tell you, I'm going to give you just a little history of this.
Just watch the time. So
Yeah,
if you want to make your main
I've
points,
been
that's important.
I'm just about ready to hold up 1 minute. So.
Yeah, is that, I lost that thought.
History.
The appeals process is cumbersome, but it's the legal process, and that's what we wanted to follow. I started in 2012 in Coos Bay. That application was about 100 pages. They pulled that application, and then they resubmitted it, pulled it again, and now it's been resubmitted. That application now is 2,500 pages. I'm going to ask you, please, if you have some meetings, to please give people enough time to review the documents and get their comments in. This is terribly frustrating. We're at Christmas. The Siting Council, that document is 650 pages. Now I got one that's 2,500 pages. This is asking an awful lot of the citizens. And I know that you do really want a citizen involvement in the process. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nicole Jackson.
Madam Secretary, Treasurer Wheeler, thanks for the unexpected opportunity to get to talk about an item that wasn't on the agenda. My comments are going to seem somewhat off the cuff because they weren't prepared. But I'm here as a concerned citizen to talk about removal fill permits for Jordan Cove Energy Project in the Pacific.
Could you say your name and community
sorry.
for the record? Sorry,
Yes,
I forgot to ask.
Nicole Jackson. I do live here in Salem, but I am a homeowner in Coos Bay and a part-time resident a few hundred yards from the bay, probably less than 200 yards from Coos Bay.
Thank you.
So I'm here to speak about removal fill permits. Do you need those numbers, or is Jordan Cove Energy Project and Pacific Connector
That's
adequate?
sufficient for this.
Okay. So I'm here to talk about, on behalf of friends and neighbors who still live there full time, we here in the valley, in the cities, take for granted our food sources. Most of us probably get most of our food from the grocery store. I know that I do, but my friends and neighbors down there, many of them grow their own vegetables, grow their own fruits, and they rely on that bay staying clean because they get their protein source from that bay. They fish, they harvest shellfish, they harvest crabs, they dig clams. Most of us, when we go to visit, we probably see people digging clams and we think, oh, isn't that a nice way to spend the day out on the bay? But these are people who are putting food on their table. This is a protein source that they rely on. These sources will be impacted if dredging occurs, if removal fill permits are given. The silts that will be disrupted will travel throughout the bay. Having been fighting the tide in a kayak, I can tell you that those currents in that bay travel very fast, carry a large amount of water very far, and that anything that happens in Hayes Inlet will affect the remainder of the bay. And because of this, I would like to request that you deny those removal fill permits. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you. Lon Otterby.
Secretary Atkins, Treasurer Wheeler, thank you so much for your graciously allowing us to speak today on this very vital issue. I'm representing a little over 3,000 members of the Sierra Club in Douglas, Coos, and Lane counties today, and we're very concerned about the recent environmental impact assessment issued in October of 2015 for the pipeline of 71 miles through our public forests that affects land up to 700 feet on each side, plus the access roads that essentially just waived the Endangered Species Act. And we're very concerned and would like to have you all, have your staff look at that report. The public comment closed, and we all commented on that at the end of November. But you all still have our backs on this, and we're very concerned about what's going to happen in our forests down there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kelly O'Hanley. Good morning. Give your name and community for the record, please.
Thanks for the reminder. I could easily forget. My name's Dr. Kelly O'Hanley. I'm a resident of Portland, Oregon, and I'm affiliated with the Physicians for Social Responsibility in Oregon. I am an obstetrician gynecologist. I also have a degree in public health. I've helped teach the next generation of physicians at Stanford and at Harvard, and I've worked in almost 40 countries internationally trying to protect the health of mothers and babies. But the fact is, to me, the importance of climate change as a risk of our health is much more important than anything I did with that work. The science, I think, is very clear about climate change. To the extent there was any doubt, it's kind of become clear with publications such as the Merchants of Doubt that it was basically some hired gun scientists that spoke out to try to obscure the truth, but really the consensus is there about climate change. And organizations such as the National Institutes of Health, Centers for Disease Control, and the World Health Organization are all agreeing about the threats. They cite concerns about drought and food shortages, flooding with its effects on health, increases of infectious diseases, in particular vector-borne diseases, worse air quality, which would affect heart and lung disease, in particular asthma. Temperature extremes in and of themselves are a threat to health, and forced migrations, which can affect health, and lastly, but not least, increased likelihood of armed conflict when resources get so scarce. So given that the science is clear, at this point it's in the political arena to decide how we go forward. The fact is that liquid natural gas is not the bridge fuel it was once believed to be. It's becoming clear that it's as bad as coal if you look at the life cycle in terms of climate impact. So I'm here on behalf of physicians and behalf of mothers and children, present and more to the point, future mothers and children, to ask you to use the power that's entrusted to you to stop the liquid natural gas pipeline and terminals. I thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Emmeline Garrett. Give your name and community for the record. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Emmeline Garrett. I live just outside of Grants Pass, but my community really spans the state of Oregon. I didn't come prepared to speak. No one did. Thank you for putting us on the agenda. I know that when and if you allow for more public hearings, some of these people who drove 5 hours to be here will be able to have better commentary for you. And when and if you extend the time frame wherein we can review these documents, people will be able to better and more eloquently tell you how these projects don't fit within the scope of your jurisdiction of the watersheds and the state lands in the state of Oregon. Like I said, I'm a resident of Southern Oregon. Sometimes people say Southern Oregon wants these projects. These oyster farmers here don't want these projects. The 95% of landowners whose land will have to be seized by eminent domain don't want these projects. My little sisters who go to school in the blast zone of Jordan Cove don't want these projects. And I don't really want my little sisters living next to a man camp, so I don't want these projects either. By my count, there's more than 7 counties here. What you're looking at is really an unprecedented political upswelling in the state of Oregon. You're seeing, so far as I can tell, what's one of the most well-organized and savvy political movements that Oregon has seen for a really long time. You're looking at some of the best and the brightest and the most clever. And Treasurer Wheeler, I'll address you when I say this. You're looking at some of your a powerful part of your constituency if you're interested in being the mayor of Portland, Oregon. You're looking at a group of people.
They're already my constituents.
What? Oh, good. So, is that a public statement against the LNG projects in the state of Oregon?
I'm just noting that people forget the state treasurer exists, but everybody.
Oh,
in this room
absolutely.
is already
Yeah.
my constituents.
Great. Well, you're looking at a group of people who want nothing more than for the Oregon agencies to do their job of protecting the public interest of the state and of the people. We would be really happy if you did that, because that way we wouldn't have to wake up at 5 in the morning and drive here to your meetings. We are asking you to hold hearings in the affected counties. People should not have to wake up at 5 a.m. People whose livelihoods and whose land and whose communities are threatened deserve to be able to have their say at a hearing in the places where they live. We are asking you to extend the commenting period. People deserve to spend Christmas with their families, not poring over long, boring legal documents. We are asking you to reject these projects that are not in interest of the state of Oregon. And we are making a promise. This is not going to go away until these projects go away. And this is not going to go away until fossil fuel infrastructure goes away.
Let's hold our reactions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Yep. Leonard Higgins. And could I also say, I think we all understand political context, but if we could keep campaign-related comments out of this, it would,
I enjoy it.
It would be very hard.
Thanks, Leonard.
Good morning, Treasurer Wheeler, Secretary Atkins.
Morning.
My name is Leonard Higgins. I live in Corvallis, Oregon. I am here in opposition to the Jordan Cove project and the Pacific Connector pipeline. I'm part of a 5-generation family of Oregonians. I've lived in Oregon my whole life. My grandfather came here in the 1800s and settled on a farm in Eugene. My children and some of my children and my grandchildren live in Oregon, and I'm here on their behalf. We're at a moment of crisis globally. I am becoming increasingly disillusioned with leadership in our country and in state and local government when I see that the kind of action that's needed to address that crisis is just not happening. It's not even being planned. And in that desperation, I am willing personally to put myself on the line and do civil disobedience in opposition to these projects. And I'm one of a really large number of very law-abiding citizens, very solid citizens, that are willing to do that what's happening is not right. If you look back to the creation of the State Land Board and the responsibility that board was given to protect Oregonians, to protect the resources, to look out for the welfare of the children of the state. And then when I see you doing business as usual, you're all good people. I'm not questioning your intent. I'm questioning the reality of what's happening. It doesn't seem that you and many of the other leaders are really understanding the charge and the responsibility to protect the citizens and the children that your decisions impact. And I don't understand why we're here today needing to oppose something that seems so obviously wrong. Whether you look at it globally in terms of the carbon emissions, or whether you look at it nationally in terms of the fracked gas that is hurting communities in the rest of the United States, those people are not being looked out for. All of this, from my perspective, is being done for profit, not with the interest of the citizens of the nation or the citizens of this state. And so please think about the charge and your responsibility to the citizens and the children of this state. Thank you.
Thanks, Leonard.
Thank you very much. Dr. Theodora Tsongas.
Good morning. Thank you for letting me testify. I'm Dr. Theodora Tsongas. I'm from Portland, Oregon. I'm an environmental health scientist, retired from the Oregon Health Division, and I'm on the Environmental Health Work Group of Oregon Physicians for Social Responsibility. I'm here today to speak because I'm very concerned about the
You
health.
can hold the mic down, so
Okay.
don't be afraid to, so that you don't have to keep going up and down. I know
Okay.
it's awkward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm here because I'm concerned about the very real health and safety risks associated with the Jordan Cove LNG terminal and pipeline. The health risks that we can list associated with this project relate to exposure to diesel emissions and noise at the terminal and along the pipeline, and during operation and construction, the risks of leaks, fires, and explosions along the pipeline and at the terminal, and the adverse health impacts, which are very great, resulting from catastrophic climate change. The health risks include cancer, cardiovascular disease, lung disease, allergy and infectious disease, reproductive and developmental disorders, mental health disorders, and death. Many scientific and medical leaders have stated that climate change is a medical emergency, and it needs to be, we need to work to change things right now. This terminal will only exacerbate climate change and contribute to adverse health impacts. This project is not sustainable, and it's not in the public interest. Please deny all permits associated with this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Tsongas. Angela Van Patten.
Hi. Thank you to the board for allowing me this opportunity to speak. I'm from Portland, Oregon. My name's Angela Van Patten. I am a member of various climate organizations in Portland and actually regionally as well in the state. I also am a mother of two daughters who are in Portland who are both climate activists as well, because they're working to turn the tide on climate change, which threatens the world that they love. I'm speaking to the concern of climate change primarily, and also specifically to the short and long-term risks of fossil fuel infrastructure development in our state, including the Jordan Cove project. After Boardman closes in 2020, the Jordan Cove project, when completed, would be the largest carbon emitter in the state. The arguments in favor include the idea that the project would provide jobs and that fracked methane gas can be considered a bridge fuel in the transition away from fossil fuels worldwide. 10 years ago, the bridge fuel idea was considered valid based on available evidence. but multiple studies in recent times have shown that while so-called natural gas is cleaner burning, the extraction and transport process releases so much methane, a highly potent greenhouse gas, that it's now considered clearly to be every bit the threat that other fossil fuels are. Oregonians are already experiencing many effects of climate change, with more to follow as we continue down our present course. These impacts have affected many jobs already in our state, including in forestry, agriculture, and in the industries dependent on the pristine estuarine environments, such as that of Coos Bay, which currently supports, among others, a thriving oyster industry. It's telling that over 90% of the landowners who have rejected offers to buy passage rights of the pipeline by Williams Pipeline Corporation through their land and would have to have those lands taken by eminent domain, essentially for the profit motive of a foreign corporation, Veresen. I urge the State Land Board to back what landowners and sustainable business owners and citizens who love this state have clearly seen, and deny the capacity of Williams Pipeline Company to clear-cut 100-foot wide pipeline pathways through pristine forests and rangelands made more vulnerable to fire by climate change, crossing 400 streams and rivers, and ending in a terminal in Jordan Cove, sited in a vulnerable estuarine environment endangering salmon, oysters, and other marine life. That it would be sited in a known earthquake, liquefaction, and tsunami zone magnifies greatly the hazard to the region, sustainable businesses, and to Oregonians more broadly. And I'm urging you to say no in any capacity you can to this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Deborah McGee. Did I get that right?
Very well reasoned statement.
Your name and community for the record, please.
My name is Deborah McGee, and I've lived for 30 years on the same little piece of land outside Eugene. I'm a co-founder of 350 Eugene, and we have about 1,500 engaged citizens. I'm a retired 30-year public school educator. I believe in education. I believe in science. The scientists are telling us that 350 parts of carbon pollution is the safe upper limit. Currently, we're at 404 parts per million. That's why the ice caps and the glaciers are melting. Even though we, humans, as a species, are not facing the reality of a profound climate crisis, still, we are indeed in a profound climate crisis. I know from personal experience as an organic subsistence farmer that for the last 10 years that I've been paying attention, temperatures are warmer, seasons come later, and when it's over 90 degrees too many days in a row, my apples and pears stop growing. Smaller yields, less food. My well produces less water, and for the first time, large numbers of Douglas fir trees are dying in our valley. Scientists say we must move back to 350 parts to keep a livable human habitat, doing anything to allow or enable the further extraction and burning of LNG, methane, which, as others have stated, scientists now tell us, given the total lifetime of emissions is as bad or worse than coal, is irresponsible and is not in the interests of Oregonians, the United States, or the world. Oregonians are waking up. We're getting educated. We're watching our politicians. We're watching the regulatory agencies that are supposed to be protecting the interests, safety, and health of us, the citizens. Please, for the sake of humanity, protect us. Say no to enabling these fossil fuel projects. Thank you.
Thank you. And I appreciate the silent demonstration. That's a very nice way to go about it. Ted Gleachman? Blakeman. Oh, thank you. Sorry.
I share the gratitude of my colleagues for granting us this special time. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And my name is Ted Gleichman. I represent a small national nonprofit, the Center for Sustainable Economy, and the National Sierra Club, a large national nonprofit. And my goal, Secretary Atkins Secretary Wheeler, Treasurer Wheeler. I've never forgotten about the state treasurer, I must say.
You and my mom.
Well, those of us who care about bond ratings and resilience, and I'll come to that in just a moment. And of course, I also want to recognize Mr. Whitman's presence. We really appreciate it. My goal today diverges slightly from what you've heard from these stellar voices from my colleagues here. We obviously oppose both of the liquefied natural gas export terminal and pipeline projects aimed through Oregon toward Asia. But my request on behalf of Center for Sustainable Economy and Sierra Club is rather that the state of Oregon, in all of its agencies, commit to a deep dive with maximum scientific and technical capability throughout its evaluations of the many required permits and approvals yet to be received. These are genuine big deals. Each of these projects is a $7 billion project, the same size as the Keystone XL pipeline as proposed and now vetoed by the President. And they would be either one, the largest single construction projects in Oregon history. These are not small local projects. From the point of view of the people advocating for them, there are two theoretically good reasons to promote these projects. One is that the myth alluded to earlier that gas is good for the global climate. Not true, and I will leave you with a handout which I asked to be entered into the record that we've produced locally, identifying the fallacies to that. The second issue, of course, is jobs. The jobs that would be provided by construction and in permanent facilities are genuine jobs, real jobs. They pay mortgages, support families, but jobs that destroy the planet are not good jobs. Good jobs come from resilience versus the earthquake and the tsunami, which Treasurer Wheeler's office has done a tremendous amount of study on and very aware of it, and renewables, the clean energy transition that we know we all need to have. And there's a remarkable new report just out from the Labor Network for Sustainability and 350 National that speaks to those things. And I will leave those with you, two for Mr. Whitman so that he can pass on one to a good friend. And I have a gift for Ms. Clausen, and I'll get one for John Clark as well on behalf of the 160 years that they represent in time on this planet. It's a cultural approach to dealing with the value of oysters. First, we have Botticelli, The Birth of Venus. I know that's not actually an oyster, but it's calcium carbonate. And then second, we have Lewis Carroll, The Walrus and the Carpenter, the building trades. Building trades and walruses both agree that oysters are delicious.
Thank you very much. Paul Spindell. Thank you, Mr. Spindell. Would you give your name and community for the record?
Hi, my name is Paul Spindell, and I live in West Lynn, Oregon. Thank you again for your time, for everybody being here. I don't know why the rest of you didn't get acknowledged for your time here, but I'll thank you as well. I'm an instructor in the Center for Executive and Professional Education at Portland State University, and am a member of a number of other groups in the state that try to help us think differently. And a couple things I'll just share with you. I was recently teaching a class on leadership and management, and we talked greatly about the difference between those two things. And both are very valid. And management is doing things right and making sure we go through all the procedures and policies and all that and see how things fit and all that. But leadership is doing the right things. And I've spent a lot of time recently both studying indigenous wisdom and also spending a lot of time with children. And I'm continually touched by the concept of 7 generations. That what are we doing to keep in mind the impact of what we do on 7 generations from now? Many of us have kids. Many of us are now having grandkids and their grandkids and their grandkids. And what are we doing to think about the impact of the decisions on them? And that, to me, is leadership. Remembering a poem I read recently, and it talks about what did you do once you knew? And in that poem, the gentleman talks about how he awakened from a dream, and in the dream, his great-great-great-grandchildren were asking them, what did you do when the earth was being plundered? What did you do when the animals were all dying? When the seas were rising and taking over the land? What did you do once you knew? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, we've come to the end of our list, and I do appreciate the acknowledgement that this was an add-on to our agenda today, and I think everybody does appreciate the process that you all agreed to, and that some of you were speaking a little bit off the cuff, which is in many ways maybe the best way to convey a message. As you know, the processes are ongoing. I think that all of us would recommend the staff take all of these comments into account as they are moving forward with their decisions. And I'd like to close the meeting. We're adjourned. Thank you.
So nothing on the modernity.
I guess, are we not doing John? No. They were going to do a certificate, but I guess not.